remember the Albany High School that they built in the 56, 57 range? They built a new high school. They just closed that down.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have an all-class walkthrough.
You want to open it up for the
2
class?
weeks from now. And we hope to go down for it.
Y'all are living where?
We live in Manchester, Georgia,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is
That's near Callaway Gardens.
Uh-huh.
We live near Callaway Gardens.
Yeah.
Warm Springs. Little white house.
just let that run down there. And I'm going to get over here. So you remember Louis Harrell from Moultrie?
Yeah.
All right. What do you remember about Louis?
Not much. I don't know too much about
We've got his picture.
That was the one you were looking for?
Yeah, we looked for him and we found him. Yep. Don't run off, Glenn. Come on in. We don't care if your stomach
Yeah,
growls.
we'd like, if you want to see this, it would be interesting.
We're going to leave it with you anyway. Okay. Now that's sound only. This is sound and tape back here. But Louis Harrell was the very first pastor, had it for about a year, and then y'all came in behind him and took it over until 57. Now here is the first picture that we have. Those were the charter members. This was Mrs. Harrell over here on the far side. Can you see that okay?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was Louis Harrell right here in the middle.
Uh-huh.
Then Mr. Cochran right here in the middle. Well, one of the questions that we had was, do you remember anything about Mrs. Cochran?
No, I don't.
Okay. That was one of the questions. We can't find anybody that remembers Mr. Cochran. We've got his picture, we know his name, and we know his wife's name. I mean, at least we know that it's Mr. Cochran and Ms. Cochran. We don't know their first names or where they came from. But this is across the front. Well, Miss.
Where she see
Okay, no, we don't want to turn it away from Glenn. Come on, Randy.
I'm good.
Come on, son. Come on. Here, this is Ms. Harrell and Mr. Harrell, and you knew them
Uh-huh.
out of Moultrie. Then Mr. Cochran, then Mr. Wilson and Ms. Wilson. I know you remember them. And then in the back row, we over here had Grace Broadway and Eugenia Crosby.
Uh-huh.
And I know you remember them.
That's Macmillan.
That's right.
Ruth Macmillan.
This particular one was Grace Broadway and Eugenia. And I do see Macmillan in here. There you go, Ruth Macmillan. Middle row, right there in the black. Okay, you're right. This was the first homecoming in 51. We can't see anybody that, big enough to see anybody, but that was a big crowd that y'all had in 1 year's time. Y'all had that many folks there.
We really have a good ministry there, and it grew fast.
And this is taking one end of the photograph, and then we went to the other end, as Vicky did, and got the other end of the same crowd. There's Mr. and Mrs. Wilson in the pulpit. Oh, let me ask you about the church while I'm thinking about it. That little bitty church, the wooden church there, it was moved from one end of the block down to the other. Do you remember when they moved that church?
No, I don't. I might have it written down somewhere.
Do you remember when they had the church on the corner of Carroll Street and Sylvester Road in that little old storeroom?
Yeah.
You remember that? Did it have dirt floors only, or did it have part wooden floors?
I don't remember.
The best we could remember, it all had dirt floors in the first building. And was the, when you moved from that building down the street a block to the little wooden church, was the wooden church there waiting on you, or did it have to be moved?
I think it had to be moved from around the corner
Mm-hmm.
because it was, what kind of church was it?
Church of God, I believe.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it was around on the other street, and we moved it around to Carroll Drive.
Okay. And who did the moving? Did Douglas move it, or?
I really don't remember. I don't think Douglas did.
There's the Henry. There they are again. That's in 52. There you are. I want these folks to see what you look like. Y'all gather around here. 'Cause
Yeah.
I want y'all to see a movie star here.
I see a movie
I
star.
want y'all to see it. Look on the right and tell me who that is.
I'm getting your tea. I haven't forgot your tea. You're not recording this, are you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, are you
No, not
recording
yet.
this talking?
Yes, of course. But look over here on the right-hand side.
Look at there. Look at there. Miss Horne. Watch her
We're
smile.
talking about Hollywood now.
Oh, look at you, Miss Horne. Oh, pretty.
I'm talking, no
Yeah.
wonder we had a good attendance.
1950.
That's right.
Now we know it.
That's right.
Oh.
Can
How
y'all-
old were you then? 52.
Wow.
50. How many years ago was that, y'all?
She was 15 then.
She was 15. Let me do my math.
But now you're talking Hollywood there.
Beautiful, Miss Horne.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now, this is Henry and Eva Wilson. That's Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. They were standing by that little house trailer they used to live in.
Yeah.
Now, I've got one picture showing the old wooden church with that trailer beside it. That must have been on Johnson Road. But I thought they lived across there in the trailer park. So what happened there?
No, they didn't live in that trailer park at all.
Okay,
They lived right next door to the church.
okay, the old church up on Johnson Road. Okay, or Johnson Avenue. Okay, so they lived next door where the old church was. Now, when the old church moved down to the corner of Carroll Street, did they leave their trailer where it was, or did they move it with the church?
I think they moved it.
Okay. But that's their trailer. Now, this is when we used to have the radio station, the radio group out there. Nobody know where y'all can see. You don't have to worry about it. We go.
Look at my husband.
Look at your
I've
husband.
seen it.
Come on around here. Of course, now we're gonna leave this with you anyway. But here he is. He was a clown.
Was he?
Look at it. Back there, hollering out something and caught him with his mouth open. But this is several of the members of the church.
I
And
think we took that after the radio program.
that's exactly right. The WALG radio program in 1952. They
I
had
was 1 year old.
they had no listenership. You know, on Monday, still hadn't got it right. On Sunday afternoon, they didn't have anybody listening, so the church got the time sheet.
That's good.
But we had a good time.
Do you think your husband wants to play with water?
Oh, just plain water. Be fine. Plain water be fine.
Okay, plain water.
Well, here,
we got
the
to.
people we have
You
in
know,
here,
I'm not used to hosting people every day, y'all. So,
Evangeline Hyde,
so
Ruth McMillan.
I put a little sweet
Then there's an
on it.
unknown man, maybe we'll find the name, Grace Broadway and Earl Broadway. And on the front row is Mr. Hall, then Henry Wilson, and Miss Wilson. Then there was a Miss Gaines. Do you remember the Gaines family?
Oh, yes.
Very
yes,
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, we have pictures of Mr. and Miss Gaines, but we know they had a good-sized family.
They did.
And we don't have a picture of any of the children that we know of. Maybe there's some pictures in here that we couldn't identify that really were children of the Gaineses. We'll see those in a minute. But then
You know, their daughter married Harold Mills.
I did not really remember that part, but I remember there was a Marine by the name of Robert Scott who
Yeah.
married one of the Gaines girls, Billy Gaines. She's still alive. She works at a country club, so you know she's not an ugly gal if the country club is still working. So she must be in her, what, early 80s at least. So,
No, I don't think she's that old.
gotta be. I'm 75, she was older than I.
Well, see, I can't remember.
We're getting to that stage too, pretty good.
And here's another shot out front of the bunch who came out of the radio station. Still in 52. Same group that was there a while ago. This is Mr. and Ms. Wilson. Milton Hyde, that's the father. Louise was standing beside him. Then you. And then kneeling down up front was Carl Dennis. You know, he moved out of Nashville. He's gone to another location now. And then Henry Wilson, Douglas Barfield, Brother Horne, and then Quentin Moore. I hope all of them wasn't singing on the radio, because I remember what a couple of them used to sound like me. There's the Macmillan girl, Janice Macmillan, Gloria Crawley, and Bill Crawley. Kenneth Knight. There's Carl Dennis. I'm going to go through these quick because you can. Do you remember we went to Indiana
Yes.
for y'all to hold a revival in the southern part of Indiana? This was where we were crossing the Ohio River on a ferry boat operated by my uncle. And there was Brother Horne, and there was my mama and me. So that must have been you taking the picture.
Must have.
Okay, there's a homecoming in 53 with Robert Shiver, Francis Moore, and Ian Hall. There's Brother Horne standing there with Brother Hall. More on the homecoming, a bunch of kids. And I'm going to leave this with you. Robert Shiver.
Don't be so fast.
Oh yeah, she can do this later. We got a lot of ground to cover in my 2 hours. All right, there's Marie Cox, Eula Hall, and Aline Shiver.
Do you remember those names, Miss Horne?
Good.
There's George Hall again, Quentin Moore, Robert Shiver. There's the Hall bunch, Ann Hall, Jake and Elizabeth Milam, Colleen and Dennis Milam, or Denise Milam.
Are they all still living pretty much? They're all still,
Well, a lot of the kids are still living, yes, but all of their parents are deceased. Carl and Francis.
She's one of the few originals left.
Yeah, both of those people are still alive, and they just moved out of the retirement homes at Trevecca.
Which
And
one is that?
This is
Dennis?
Carl,
Oh, yeah,
Carl Francis and Carl Dennis.
They moved out of the towers.
They moved out of the towers into, I have a place written down somewhere, but they moved into a city where they're close to one of the children, I believe. All right, there's Henry and Eva Wilson. We called them brother and sister. We thought that was their first name, brother and sister. Wilson. All right, there's a 54 homecoming with more people in there. And here you are. In 54
Look at
with
that
the
smile.
Barfields and the Horns. There's Douglas Barfield with the youngins that were alive at the time, or born at the time. And you know, Larry's deceased now.
Larry's a what?
Larry died, had a heart problem. Do you know those folks?
I believe I do.
Who is it?
Brother and Sister Horne.
and that was
54.
in 1954,
That's
but they were
correct.
pastored, they pastored there for 6 years.
That's right.
You're a movie star, Miss Horne.
Absolutely. There's the Macmillans. My mother and daddy. Dennis and Hubert Moore. Moore on the 54 crowd. There's the Halls. They were up at Adrian Campground when that was taken.
Are they both living?
No, they're both deceased. And here are the Sailors, Mr. and Miss Sailor.
Oh, yeah.
I think that, I'm not positive about that, whether that was taken at the Sunday school rooms or whether that was over at the William Ben's apartment where they live. There's some of their sons.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now there's my aunt and uncle. This is my daddy's sister. That's Murtis and Riley.
Kind of looked around, but didn't
That
see
was her name.
That was my aunt. We called her Mutt. My aunt Mutt, my daddy's sister. They were standing in front of the new Barfield house that we had over there on Carroll Street, just about 4 doors down from you.
Yeah.
We bought that whole just about the whole block was church members.
Oh.
That's neat.
There's the Snellgroves. Now they moved in after you, so
Now, they were pastoring when he and I got married.
Oh.
now this is a picnic time back in the 50s, 55 it says, and we would go out to Chew Hall Park sometimes on Sunday. That was Pete Helms over here that you can't see too well. My daddy, and of course that's Marie Holden and Judy Helms. And there I am in Gene Saylor, Kenneth Broadway, and we're moving on.
Did Judy
Sharon.
die?
Do what?
Did Judy die?
No, I don't think so.
She has heart problems.
Who is that?
Judy Helms.
Judy Helms.
So those are all the children that Miss Horne knew as y'all's pastor.
That's right. We all
Okay.
consider
And
her
this-
mama.
And that's what y'all look like back then. Oh, and he grew up to become a preacher, right? He just has that look about him.
No,
What did he?
the night boys did not come to preach. No,
What did they grow up to do?
they were. I believe
Or
one of them was a coach.
it's funny, isn't it?
Mhm.
You never know. how
Now
they-
they're the Hydes, and this is Dan. Dan is a pastor now. He's still alive. He was a pilot in the military. This was the father and the mother. Louise is right here. Louise died not too many years ago,
She did.
and I think one of the younger ones. I think the boy may be deceased, but there are at least 3 of them remain.
And now, what state is this?
This is Georgia,
Georgia.
Albany, Georgia.
Albany, Georgia. And what was the name of the church?
First Church of the Nazarene in Albany, Georgia.
So Miss Horne was 15?
At least
He was teasing.
I was teasing.
Oh, okay. I thought.
think she was
wait a
really
minute, were you
6.
married then? Okay.
She might have been 26.
Okay. Oh, how about that?
Well, she went to Tribeca.
Okay, let me stop and ask you.
Would you
Let me ask
let
you
me-
a question about romance.
Oh, she'll know it.
Ooh, look at this.
She'll know it.
We've got a lot of history on Tribeca with Brother Horne. And we have you starting in Sumter, South Carolina, in him and Moultrie. But we don't know about the romance. How did y'all meet?
We met at Tribeca.
Mr.
You were-
Dawson, people, you need to have
survived
Oh,
some.
okay. All right, thank you so
I was
much.
gonna say, you did good to do that all that time.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, we,
You met at Tribeca.
uh-huh.
How many years were you there?
Oh, well, I was only there that 1 year.
Do you remember what year it was?
See, I went to Tribeca. 47 or 48, I don't remember.
Really? Okay. Did you meet Brother Horne at Tribeca? Okay. Well, we're putting this story together. Now that's we knew he went to Tribeca, and we could pick him up out of the 1950 Darla, the yearbook for Tribeca. Do you have any of those yearbooks?
I might have a couple, I think.
That's wonderful. If you ever run across them, we'd sure have to look through them sometime.
Okay.
So, you attended, you think, in the late 40s in
What, Tribeca?
Tribeca? Couple of years.
I got saved in 46.
Did you come from Sumter? Okay. So you were with the Nazarene Church, you attended the Nazarene Church in Sumter, then went on to Tribeca. When did Brother Horne start to school at Tribeca?
Start what?
To school at Tribeca as a student. Did he also start in the 40s? We show his picture in the
Yeah.
50s.
He was, He was already there when I went,
Okay.
and he had been there, I think, a year. So I went in, I think I went in 48, I think, I don't remember. It's been many years ago.
That's more information than we had. Absolutely. Okay, I'm listening. Anything else about the romance? How did you get to where was it? Moultrie, Georgia. Now, when did you meet Mama Horne?
Well, let's see. We had gotten out of Trevecca, and I was at home, and they wanted to meet me, so I went to Moultrie and met this woman. You know, he started already deceased, but I met her then, and we wasn't gonna get married in June. We were gonna get married, I think, in July. And Mama Horne said, I don't see any need for y'all to have to leave in June, you come back in July, and you could, why don't you just get married now? Well, that suited us fine.
So Mama Horne, you passed the test with Mama Horne.
Huh?
You passed that test.
Yeah, passed the test. She was, approved me, and, in fact, she's the one that said, don't wait till July to get married, you'd have to come back and all that, why don't you just get married now?
Where is she buried? Where's Mama Horne buried?
She's buried in, Moultrie.
Moultrie. Do you remember which cemetery?
Well, I think they just, that time they only had the one, and that was over there, let's see. I don't know the street name, but, it was an old cemetery.
Mm-hmm. The DARTA, the Trevecca yearbook from 1950 showed Brother Horne's address on, I believe, 7th Street. Was that where he was living? Were they living on 7th Street, or does that ring a bell? Okay. How far was that from the church?
It was on the opposite side, you know, it wasn't close.
Opposite side of town?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed the 1950 yearbook looked like a who's who with Georgia preachers, like anybody that was important was in that 1950 DARTA. And I wish I could remember them right off the top of my head. McCumber was in there, and I noticed that he was one of our evangelists. He came in from time to time, and there were others. Mac Anderson was in there. He was probably on the faculty, or for some reason I saw his name in there.
He was a district superintendent.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But,
Tell me who you remember as far as the evangelist who came to preach for us. We had the evangelist must have been twice a year. Who can you remember as far as, what was the guy's name that came down, was a chalk artist?
yeah.
He would draw pictures. I think I've got his name back there at the house somewhere, but do you remember him? He was there more than one time, as I recall.
Was that Ralph Swisher?
It doesn't sound right. It wasn't Swisher, was it?
What?
Swisher? That doesn't sound right to me, but I think I've got his name down somewhere. We also had, it seemed to me like we had at least one, if not two, lady evangelists who came to preach. Do you remember?
Alpha and Vera.
Alpha and Vera, what were their last names? Were they sisters?
No, Well, Alpha married, G.W. Harold.
Another how?
Harold, which is Glenn Allen's
Mama.
daddy, Brother Harold, Pastor Harold, G.W. Harold,
Okay, so there is a.
from
there's-
Sumter.
Okay, all right. So that was one of our lady evangelists, and her name was what again?
Alpha and Vera.
Alpha and Vera. Okay. And they, what was Alpha's
Connie.
name?
Alpha was Alpha May Hodge. She was from Ohio.
And that, would that have been her name when she was in Albany?
Yes.
Alpha May Hodge?
Alpha.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hodge.
That's her son.
Right.
And Vera was Vera, she was Vera Connor at that time.
Vera Connor.
And she married Ralph Swisher, who was a chalk artist.
Okay.
Now, who married the chalk artist?
Connie, I'm sorry. Vera was a Connor. There was a third lady that traveled with them in music. Her name was Connie Kelly. And Connie was a sister to C.M. Kelly, right?
Sister to who?
Wasn't she a sister to C.M.
See
Kelly?
Young Kelly?
And Connie's the one that married Ralph Swisher, the chalk artist.
Okay.
But that was an Alpha Hodge and Vera Connor that you're talking about to start with.
Okay. Now, you know I'm gonna have to ask you this later on, because I'm not taking good notes, and you're probably too far away from the microphone, but at least we know we got information on at least 2 lady evangelists. Was that the only 2 that, I seem to remember only 2.
That's
But-
only two I remember.
Okay.
Do you get it, Ben?
I don't know when, see, I don't know when the connections came. I don't know if Vera was with her first or if Connie was with her first. I can't remember that. But the 3 of them wound up traveling together, and they did music. But when you mentioned the chalk artist, that clicked with
Okay.
me because Ralph Swisher was an evangelist and a chalk artist, played the organ. And Connie Kelly married Ralph Swisher.
All right. Have you got that list? of
Miss
questions?
Horne,
Let
you want a
out.
sip of your water? You want some water? Why don't you sip on some water?
I know I have
I do
one
not.
here somewhere.
Throat won't get.
I have one somewhere.
What
Oh,
would you
I'm just
like?
looking. Yep.
Oh.
I just didn't want to make sure that I didn't miss any.
I've
Question.
got a picture of Mama if y'all want that.
Yeah, bring it.
Sure.
You want some water.
We talked about the romance. That's an interesting story.
Well, she used to, when they retired and started coming, attending Sumter first, she'd stand up and give a praise and say she went to Trevecca for her MRS.
And this is Glenn Allen's mama when she got married, because
Yes.
Brother Horne and Miss Horne, from what I understand, went to school with
And-
Brother Horne.
And this is
And that's
one.
how there was the Brother Harold.
This is one of the evangelists.
That's Alpha.
This is Alpha, who is Glenn Allen's mama.
Okay.
And Brother Harold was a pastor
Did
also
you get this
at
picture?
Trevecca.
Did you get this picture? That's one of the women, the lady evangelist, who was his mother.
Right.
So get that picture.
Who married G.W. Harold, who also went to Trevecca, and Brother Harold and Brother Horne were, I'd say, best friends.
Yes, they
Right.
were.
Best
Little
friends.
buddies.
So there were 2
So,
Harolds
there's a picture there.
at Trevecca, and they were unrelated? They-
Well, I know, like I said, if his family, if Louis Harrell's family was from around Greensboro, North Carolina, they very well could be kin to Daddy, because that's where he's family.
Write that part down, that name, because I didn't hear it good. I
Okay.
do not remember. Harold,
Harold.
She was Alpha
Alpha.
May Hodge,
Alma.
Alpha, A-L-F-A, I think.
A-L-P-H-A.
A-L-P-H-A, Alpha.
Like
Alpha.
Alpha.
Like in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Alpha Hodge.
Oh,
But she was from
Alpha-
Ohio, you
Alpha
said.
May Hodge,
And that was your mother?
that's my
Yeah.
mother, and she married my dad, G.W. Harold.
This all gives me chills.
What's that?
I just love
I
the
know.
connections in the
I know, this
Nazarene
is
church.
good. This is very good. This is being done.
Wonderful.
I
wonderful.
grew up
See,
Methodist and I
can
just
see
love
her
this
eyes in
Nazarene
your eyes, I
stuff.
think.
Okay,
My daughter and my grandson.
how did you get from
Did you take
Sumter,
from her side
South
and one of your
Carolina down
daughters?
to Cairo, Georgia? Did you have a car, or did you borrow one, or
Cairo.
not Cairo?
My mother, and when I was little.
Moultrie,
Is your
Moultrie, Georgia.
personality
That was
more
his
like
home.
hers?
Right. How did you get down there? Did you have a
I took
car
off
by that
with
time,
my
or did somebody
father's
take you, or did you
side, not
ride?
my mother's.
Uh,
My mother was.
I guess we had a car.
Easy going.
Easy going.
You didn't catch a bus?
Stirred her up. She would just tell it like it was, say it like it was,
And tell me the other name of the lady that,
Your hair is so pretty.
probably.
aside from Alpha Mahaj, what was the other lady
I think I
evangelist?
have a copy of
It
this.
would have either been Vera Connor,
Yeah.
and I can't remember who Vera married, or it would have been Connie Kelly Swisher. Connie was a Kelly, and I'm pretty sure that she was seeing Kelly's sister.
She was.
But
Red
all three ladies that you just gave me were evangelists.
They sang together. They traveled all over the country. Matter of fact, that's how Mama and Daddy met.
That's amazing.
What's your phone number?
Mine?
Yeah.
Judy,
Either one. I'll send you this other
Yeah.
picture of Mom.
he wants your phone number so he can send you a picture. Okay, let me get back over here.
573.
When did Brother Horne graduate from Trebek?
0561.
It was in,
I wear hearing aids, so if you're not looking at you,
1951.
sometimes I don't hear.
So he graduated just before y'all came to Albany.
This is her dear,
Yeah.
dear
Okay.
bestie that she had years and years and years.
Her
and she
dog,
had
too.
kids. Yeah, so.
While he was at Trevecca, he
She
did
was
some
hard,
church
but
planting, didn't he?
yeah.
They started, they had to start some
Hey.
churches around Nashville.
I heard about some brush arbors.
Brush on.
Yeah, what is a brush arbor, Miss Horne? Y'all, didn't y'all start some brush arbors?
He started the Bell Road Church in a brush arbor.
And what is a brush arbor?
A brush arbor is where you cut down posts and you put straw and stuff on the top that made the top of the brush arbor. And
And is that then, was that a church?
yeah,
Was that, so that was the church where the people went, the brush arbor?
he started in the brush arbor.
I just can't even fathom.
Those are like old timey words, isn't it?
Mhm.
A brush
Absolutely.
arbor and,
Somebody the other day in our conversation brought up a name that we're not sure that even came from our church down there, but when we were talking about lady evangelist, somebody mentioned Nettie or Nettie Miller or something. Did that name ring a bell? Who was that?
Nettie Miller was,
Miller? Okay.
she was a preacher.
She was a preacher, okay.
And she was quite popular. She was.
Did she hold a revival for us at some time, or where did we come up with that name? How would we have known her? Is she kin folks? Was she kin to some of our people there, or?
No. Now we're talking about Nettie Miller.
Nettie Miller.
She was quite a preacher. What was your question?
How, was she kin to somebody there in the church, or how did we get to know her?
Well,
Was she just an evangelist that we called in, or did she come from Trevecca? Or-
No, no. I can't remember.
Okay, but there was a lady preacher by the name of Nettie Miller. Okay. Did she preach more than once, or did she? Was it a revival, or just a one-time meeting, or do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. So that is 4 lady ministers. That's unreal. I can't.
That far ago, because
Yeah,
people don't hardly even believe in it.
That's
It's
right.
It's just the
Exactly.
right thing to do anymore.
that's exactly right.
That's awesome.
That's more than I didn't expect to come up with 1, and now we have 4. That is a great thing. That is wonderful. I noticed in the 1950 Data, the Trevecca yearbook, there were names like Hilton Gillespie. Did you know him while you were at
Yeah.
Trevecca?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think he pastored here in Georgia.
That's right. He pastored in Georgia, and he was there in Albany for a long time, and still lives there.
Yeah.
Still alive.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Giving us a nice history.
Well, good, because pictures mean a lot.
We wish we'd have done this with all of them, because when they're gone,
Do you remember moving from
So this is something-
Moultrie to Albany?
Well, we never really lived in Moultrie, I don't think. His mama did. And we probably stayed there with her son, you know, because we didn't have any place to stay in. Well, it seemed like they got a little trailer and put it on the lot for us, and we were over there for a short time.
Okay. Do you remember Mr. Holton moving your household goods from Moultrie to Albany?
Moultrie, John. Didn't he move stuff from Nashville?
It could have been.
I think we were, had stored our stuff at Dr. Hardy's, you know, I worked for him.
I did not know that.
Uh-huh.
Is that the same one in Hardy Hall? Is
Yeah.
that where that name came?
Uh-huh.
My goodness.
It, he was a doctor, medicine, you know, too.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
So he moved y'all from, not from Moultrie, but from Nashville.
Uh-huh. We moved from Nashville.
Directly to Albany.
what year was that?
Can't remember.
That was possibly when he graduated. Was that possibly in 51?
What?
Maybe in 51 when Brother Horne graduated?
Uh-huh.
Or did y'all stay in Nashville a while before you moved?
I think we stayed in Nashville for a while.
At the Brush Arbor Church?
Uh-huh.
Or Bell Road Church? Or maybe?
Railroad Church.
Did Brother Horne and your dad, Brother Harold, the same age? Were they the same age?
You knew Riley Holton passed away, didn't
He did.
you? Yeah. He's been gone several years now. His
What
Yes.
about Miss Holton?
They're all gone with the exception of Guy. Did you ever know Guy Senior? The Holtons had 3 children, I think. The oldest boy was Guy Senior. Did you know him before he went in the Navy?
I don't think so.
Then the next one would have been Riley maybe, and then Margie. I know you remember Riley and Margie. But Guy Senior had a son, and Guy Junior is still alive because I just talked to him just a few days ago.
Raleigh died since Mom did, didn't
Yeah, I think Riley hadn't been gone too many years.
Who was that?
Riley
he?
Holton.
Raleigh?
Riley.
He lived in a nursing home for the last part. He was always sharp as a tack. You know, he couldn't speak very well, but his mind was sharper than mine, which wouldn't have to say much. But one time I was visiting, Jimmy Helms and I went over to visit with Riley when Riley was living in the nursing home. and we were there. And Riley was sort of slow, and he had a real wit of humor. And he told me, he said, you know, my wife and I, you know, Riley got married later on in life. He said, my wife and I have the same birthday. And Jimmy and I said, we didn't realize that y'all had the same birthday. So he let that sink in just a minute, and he said, yeah, and we were married on the same day. And it just went right over my head. But that's right. Okay.
Maybe if he said the same anniversary, not the same birthday.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. Let's go back to the church, the very first church location, which we think was up there in that building on the corner of Carroll Street and Sylvester Road. Do you remember who you rented that thing from, or do you remember the amount of the rent, or what it was? Anything about it? Who might have attended? Do you remember? Did y'all ever have a meeting in that building? You said you think you can remember having a meeting in that building?
That store building.
You remember meeting in that building?
I think we did.
Mm-hmm. I believe that was the very first meeting location. And that's the one I was thinking about. I'm pretty sure as a store, it just had a dirt floor in it. And I wondered if it had, if it was wood floor back in there somewhere that I didn't know about, or whether it was all the dirt floor.
I don't really.
Well, you weren't in there very long. Oh, let me get back over
That
here.
became Paramore store, I remember that
Yeah,
part.
Paramore store. You remember Mr. Paramore? Now, I wouldn't carry any rumors, but some people said that Mr. Paramore might take a little nip every now and then.
But who is it?
Mr. Paramore that owned the store after we moved out. But I remember Mr. Paramore. I didn't ever see him drink, but I remember seeing him putting on that beanie cap that had the little propeller on the top, and he would get out in the middle of Sylvester Road and direct traffic.
Oh, now who was this?
This is Mr. Paramore that owned the store after we moved, after y'all moved, because I wasn't in there at that time. But he would, but you know, they would talk about him imbibing. I just never saw it, but I did see him directing traffic. All right, now let's go back to this right here.
That Charles Cox passed away, didn't he?
Recently, that's been in the last month. Yes, that's
Who's
correct.
that?
Charles Cox Sr. Charles Cox Jr.
He
is still
got-
alive, but he's a brilliant auto mechanic, and he, among other things, has these high-powered racing cars. I mean, you can walk into one of those garages down there and he just loves to see you put your fingers in your ears while he revs up the engine, you know. But he is a real sport. And why is this not coming on? I'm trying to get this thing back.
Did you ever get to the part that where Mom was in? So that you could see Mom at the reunion?
Yeah, we did see her for a minute. I'm going over these real fast. There you are in the background.
I called his mother Mom.
There's a Mother's Day. There's Brother Horne.
That's Brother Horne.
Mhm. There was, there you are over in the corner. That's Becky Avery and Evangeline Hyde sitting right there on the end. And then Margie Holton way down here on this end.
Margie's been dead a long
Christmas
time.
banquet.
Christmas banquet in 1956.
It's great to have these pictures.
And let's see, it says right-hand table. All right, there's Pete and Marie Helms sitting across from one another. My mother and daddy, Johnny and Jean Webb. Then there's somebody that we don't know sitting back there with Robert and Eileen Shiver. And then you and Brother Horne. The left table, Eula Hall, Ms. Gaines, Eddie Saylor, George Hall, And there's a 1956 Christmas banquet, starting with Eileen Shiver and you standing right beside her.
Right. Let's get a picture of Charles's mom and dad.
Yes, I put it right over here for Miss Gosa. And Miss
Okay,
Horne's
and there's the
mom and
men
dad.
for the 1956 Christmas banquet.
All dressed up.
Oh, absolutely.
Who's that at the door?
That's Brenda.
Oh, that's Brenda.
There you are singing.
Yeah,
Now there was a world-class guitar player,
he
Pete
was.
Hill.
He was
He could
good.
play it in Nashville if he'd have been up there.
Uh-huh.
And there is Ruth McMillan and you and my mother. My mother could carry a tune, but she was so soft-spoken you couldn't hardly hear it.
Who's that?
My mother singing alto. There's my mom and daddy standing with Pete and Marie.
They're not singing, I don't think.
They're not singing, they're just posing for the picture.
Christmas choir.
That little place that they were bit, if I see that old stereo thing on the wall above there,
Uh-huh.
that's where the jukebox had all the wires running around in the speakers. Because there wasn't always a Christmas program, I mean, there wasn't always a church party back there. All right, there's the Christmas choir. There's Janice and the Macmillans. Kenneth Broadway. You remember Kenneth?
Oh, that was such a terrible thing.
That's right. He was out there just horsing around and he had a piece of long wire and he wanted to see if he could toss it across that electric wire, a high tension, 110,000 volts. It fried him and he lived just a matter of hours. Okay, there's the Macmillan family, mom and daddy and them. There's my mom and daddy standing on the porch in one of the houses that they built. There's the Nazarene church, moving the old church around.
I got it.
This is the second time we moved the church. When you first saw the church, it was back there at the other church around the Church of God.
Uh-huh.
Then you moved it up there on the corner. Now they're moving it next door. Turn it into a piece of rental property.
There it is.
There it is, that's it. They moved it over. And this is where it was. That's the old, one of the old, I gotta tell you a story about this. Back here, this was a U-shaped building, and I know you remember that, the
Yeah.
U-shape. And back in the corner was the restrooms. And when we first built the restrooms, we didn't have enough money to put in all the petitions. Between the services, between the Sunday school and before preaching started, Brother Horne had a stomach problem and ran into the bathroom back here and was seated on the commode. And one of the kids ran out and left the door open. And Miss Eileen Shiver was passing at the time, and they spoke to one another just as if they'd been on the street. And he said, what else could he do? That's right, couldn't get up to close the door. But anyway, that just, all right, there's the church after it was built. And I think that building is still there today, just another church operates. That's inside the new church. That's Easter in '57. Now that's about the time y'all were winding up. So that's '57. This is your Sunday school class in '57. You can see half the church went to your Sunday school class.
She had the adult Sunday school.
They must have. Because it says Velma Horne Sunday school
Genesis
class,
on
and then everybody in the church is there. That was Mother's Day on that same. There were some folks there that we didn't know. Maybe if you can, I don't know if you can see it or not,
Oh, Miss Mother.
but we don't know who that was
Yeah.
or who that was.
Yeah, Mr. Mother.
That wasn't one of the Gaines girls, was it?
I don't think so.
Do you have any idea who that? We know who this is. That's Ms. Hall, Ms. Ewell. Do you have any ideas on those?
She can, her memory's a lot better than mine.
Her memory would be a lot better than anybody's that we got. Because nobody was able.
It's amazing. Now, the church today, what is it like?
They moved the church entirely in, I've forgotten how many years, 20+ years ago.
Oh,
They
yeah,
moved.
longer than that,
Mhm.
because wasn't it before we moved?
Miss Horne, you getting cold?
Get
You chilly?
Are you chilly?
Thank you. You don't this way.
Oh, you want that one? About 11:11.
I do that in
I'm
church
serve you your
sometimes.
lunch. I'm gonna give you your lunch about 11:11. That'll be 2 hours. Then I'll be able to check your sugar. Okay?
Yeah, don't let us hold up anything.
I told you
There's
this morning
Pete
I'm gonna
Helms.
let you.
There's Pete Helms acting crazy.
Uh-huh.
Got some kind of woman's outfit on.
What? He was crazy.
He could play that guitar.
Oh, yes, he could.
He and Charles played together. They sat on the front row.
That's right, but Brother Horne was playing the violin, wasn't he? Or what was he playing? Piano?
I think he was, what was Pete playing?
Guitar?
I think he was playing the guitar.
You think both of them are playing
Both
guitar?
of them playing the guitar. I did not remember that Brother Horne played the guitar.
Yeah, I think he played, second part.
Okay. That's amazing.
And he did play a violin.
Yeah.
In fact, he made one
And
from
we have that
scratch.
picture. Yes, we have a picture of it.
Uh-huh.
He literally made a violin from scratch.
Yes, but we're familiar with that. There's Judy and Danny Helms, that's Jimmy's sister and brother. Faye Broadway. There it is, Faye Broadway and Brenda Weston. I don't know what happened to Brenda, but Faye is still alive. There's Marion Shiver and Sharon and Gloria Crawley. There's Sharon and Gloria. There's me and my cousin Burl. Do you remember Burl, or was that after your time? That's moving on to 58, so that's probably after your time. My daddy had a brother and 2 sisters also moved to Albany, so there were 4 brothers and sisters, 4 siblings out of family that came to Albany in that late time. There's Sharon and I, back when the hormones were running.
Is that you do that bag?
Yeah.
Yeah, he and Sharon dated at one time.
Oh.
By the way, when you worked for Barfield Construction Company, do you remember a guy by the name of Gene Wright?
Gee, right. Yeah.
He was a clerk, probably worked for you. I don't know, but
Yeah.
probably a typist or something.
Yeah.
And I think I remember something about him coming from the little town of Meigs. Does that ring a bell at all?
I can't remember.
And the reason that I asked that question is that I've got this strange memory in the back of my mind that Gene Wright lived with his aunt or his grandmother, and she was a fortune teller or something like that down in Meigs. Palm reader, fortune teller, whatever it was. And I think he lived with her down there. Now there's, moving on to 58, there's Jane and Grace, and there's Earl and Grace, Broadway. Broadway, Earl is still alive, but I think he's going into hospice care, so he's not doing well at all.
Oh.
Been blind,
Who was that?
Earl Broadway, been blind for a long time.
Been blind.
Uh-huh, yeah. Now there's the Snellgroves, so they came after you. And there's Faye, who was, by that time, she was married to a guy by the name of Turner. Kenneth and Larry again.
They came to see me. Now, I think she was married to Larry Knight when they came to
Oh,
see me.
Miss Knights.
You may be
They
right.
lived near the church,
Huh?
the Knights.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
that's right.
Yeah, I
Brothers,
went to school with the younger one.
That was,
Bobby and Larry. So you were, let's say, I knew Larry, so I think Bobby might have been the
Yeah,
younger.
Bobby is the one I went to school with.
There's Jane Broadway. Here's moving on to 59, so I know this was after your time. A lot of the same people, but you had moved on to another church by that time. That was in 59. Ruth Macmillan and Jean Webb. Frances Moore. Elaine Snipes. Was she there when you were there?
I can't remember her.
Well, I think we're moving on past your years here. Marshals and the sailors. I know the sailors were there. Do you remember David Wallace? I think we passed that time. So let me get out of
Don't
that.
this from lunchtime
No.
or any medicines.
Let me look at this.
It's almost morning.
So we don't want you to miss your meal or anything like. I'm gonna leave this with you, but I'm gonna get out of this and see if I can get into another one.
When will you be back to pick this up?
I'm not gonna pick it up. I'm gonna leave this
He's
disc
gonna
with
leave
you.
it just in a disc.
And then, you can, anybody that you can talk into bringing your computer, or you might still have a computer over here. You can run it. Okay. You can run it anytime you want to. Now, let me get down here to the second part, which should be also on this one. And I'm not trying to go over all this with you, I'm just trying to show you some of the things that we got. And you just given me all kinds of good information.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we just never know when something else is going to connect, like these lady preachers today. I'd have never guessed that we'd come in for that kind of information.
He's trying to help rebuild the churches.
And this is not the only time they've done that. There's been a lot of folks work on it before, or otherwise we
It's just
wouldn't have
adding
this.
to it.
Right now, the guy that is working on it the hardest, the two, are Randy Barfield, who lives down in South America. And of course, his sister Sharon is very active in it. But the other one that's really active in it is Vicki Macmillan Copeland. She's married to a good guy.
She married Bill Copeland from Copeland Insurance, and she works with him, so she didn't have as much time to work on this right now.
She would not have known him, I don't think.
Yeah.
But at any rate, now this is moved on to 62, so I'm not going to spend much time to just tell you that. Now these people are growing up here. There's Charles Cox, Carol Crosby, Marion Shiver, Jimmy Helms. These folks are growing up. There's Carol and Marion growing on up. There's Sharon and Roger when they got married. Bobby Shiver, Timothy Crosby, Hubert Moore. Now we've gotten to the point where a lot of them have grown up and married folks that I didn't even know. And by that, see, this is 63. By that time, I'd had 2 years at Trevecca and had transferred over to another school. Tammy Barfield. I think Tammy now and some of them, of the Barfields, live down just south of Tallahassee.
There's some Gozas in Sumter.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I bet they are good-looking people.
They are. They're strong farmers. Very strong.
If they work, no, they're not kin to us.
They are.
We just lie.
These are some hard-working people.
That's Sandra Sailor. There's some more of the sailors. Now I think maybe 2 or 3 of the sailor boys are deceased, but I don't remember that enough to make that. Here is, do you remember my daddy's sister by the name of Lottie?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's her son, and they're the 3 guys, the Tres Amigos, I guess you'd call it at the time. This was in '63. there I am, there's Charles Cloud, and there's a guy by the name of Paul Saxon. Do you remember Ruth Saxon?
Yeah.
That's her brother. He just died. Several of the Saxons have passed on in recent years.
And it was fast. It was totally healthy and a long time, and was gone in like.
Never smoked a cigarette a day in his life, and he got lung cancer. And that's
I've
what
heard
took
of
him
that
out.
some lately,
Yep.
just that lung
Never
cancer.
smoked.
That's another generation of folks coming along. That's basically in the Snellgroves time. Now you can see the families, the guys, the young kids that came out. And
There's Miss Ghost.
that's it. Catherine Gossett, that's my mama.
Mhm.
Miss Wilson is still there. She's by that time married to a guy by the name of Barrow. Did you know him?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Are they both dead?
Yes. Now there's somebody else I did not know, Smithson.
Smithson.
Did you know him?
Uh-huh. He's a preacher.
Mm-hmm. Robert Shiver. Well, I got to tell you one about Robert and Douglas Barfield. You know, they were very, very, very active with the youth, especially the boys,
Mhm.
and they had both, Robert and Douglas would keep new automobiles, fast automobiles. It was, the faster the better back then. And they'd pick up 2 loads of us boys, and we'd go to some